Hi everybody, welcome to today's video where we will be exploring the law of rhythm as it pertains to the laws of our universe as a whole. This is stemming from the book The Kybalion. I highly recommend to read this book yourself, but I also have a video series on all of the laws the Kybalion talks about. So I will have those linked below if you are interested in checking them out. And thank you for watching, and let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Okay guys, jumping right into the main definition of rhythm because we don't have any time to waste. Like, we've got to figure this out. So what is the main definition of rhythm? The main definition of rhythm is everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit farther. In everything, there is manifested a measured motion, a forward and backward swing, like a pendulum. Now, what did we talk about before? In our previous video, we discussed the principle of polarity, which explored how certain concepts, certain ideas like love and hate, they're not necessarily two different ideas. They are two poles of the same concept, the same idea. Now, why is this something that's even important? Well, the Kybalion really likes to talk about mental transmutation. So, taking something undesirable and turning it into something desirable. When you look at concepts like love and hate or fear and courage as not separate ideas, but two poles of the same thing, you can that transmutation process isn't like, oh, I'm jumping from one realm, fear, to a completely different realm, courage. It's all the same thing. So they like to talk a lot about polarizing your mind up on a scale, on a concept scale, to the desired state you would like to be in. Where is the law of rhythm happening at? Specifically, in these scales, including mental states, in between the two different poles. However, these swings back and forth from one end to the other are typically not extreme, meaning we aren't usually swinging from absolute love to absolute hate. I know I focused a lot on the law of rhythm happening in mental states right there, but it's occurring in everything. It's occurring in so much more than just the mental states, which is why they say there is an action and reaction in everything. Nothing is ever completely at rest, whether that's the sun, men, animals, plants, or spirit. However, going back though to the mental planes, because that is where the main focus of today's video is going to be on in terms of where the law of rhythm is taking place. Remember what the Kybalion says. All the universal laws are affecting all of the planes, be that physical, mental, or spiritual. The law of rhythm is occurring within our minds, and it shows itself in our moods and our feelings. So, what does this mean for us then? Well, by studying the principle of rhythm, we are able to escape some of its activities by transmutation. So, let's figure out the mental plane some more so we can figure out how to transcend it and the law of rhythm. There's the lower part of the plane, which is the unconscious mind. And then there's the higher part of the plane, which is the conscious mind. Do you notice how that is technically the principle of polarity occurring again? Are the unconscious and conscious truly separate ideas, or are they two poles of the same thing? Anyways, how are we transmuting this? Let's keep going. Its operations consist in the raising of the ego above the vibrations of the unconscious plane of mental activity, so that the negative swing of the pendulum is not manifested in consciousness, and therefore they are not affected. Now, what does that even really mean? Let's take an example of myself. So I wasn't really in the best mood today. I almost didn't really want to film this video. My bad mood is like that unconscious swing. that swing towards that other end of the scale. But I'm like, hey, I need to practice this stuff that I'm talking about, right? Before, I may have just folded to that unconscious swing and chosen not to film or not to go through with it. But this was a chance for me to actually practice using the universal laws and resist that backward swing, that bad mood, the unconscious bringing me backwards. So instead of allowing it to sway me and not film, instead, I resisted that backward swing, which is what they're going to tell you to do in order to transcend this law of rhythm. And I chose to do something that's going to put me towards the life that I want, despite what my mood is telling me. This is also why you need to be very specific on what you want out of your life in order to really apply these laws. But that is an entire video in it of itself. So what I just talked about in terms of like my own example of doing this, the book then goes into further detail on this in terms of like resisting that swing backwards. So we see here the book says the Hermetic master or advanced student polarizes himself at the desired pole, and by a process akin to refusing to participate in the backward swing, or if you prefer, a denial of its influence over him, he stands firm in his polarized position and allows the mental pendulum to swing back along the unconscious plane. So, in terms of this, people who do any type of self-development work to an extent do this, right? And not letting your moods run your life, choosing to still do actions that put you towards what you want, despite what your mood may be telling you. When you don't let bad moods affect you, in turn, you are rising above the pendulum swing. And this is considered to be the law of neutralization. And the law of neutralization happens when you do that rising above the pendulum swing and you transcend that law of rhythm, or you no longer allow it. It's always in operation, but the effect on you is not the same. And in terms of mastery of this type of concept, right, there are some people in the book, they say, who are so skilled at this, they hold a mental firmness that the average man will be like, how is that even possible, right? So the more and more you practice this and the refusal of allowing that backward swing to carry you with it, to carry your conscious with it, you will become more and more skilled at this as well and gradually grow your own mental firmness. Let's talk about the other side of the coin. So what happens when you aren't aware of this law of rhythm and when you aren't actively working to rise above the pendulum swing? What happens when you aren't actively working to rise above that pendulum swing? Well, when you're unaware of the pendulum, joy is almost always followed by sadness. Courage is almost always followed by fear. However, the will is superior to the conscious manifestation of this principle, although the principle itself can never be destroyed, which is like what I said a little bit earlier. Hey, this principle is always going to be in existence, but can you resist its impact on you? Yes, you can, especially when you're aware that it's happening in the first place. So another important aspect of the law of rhythm, its accompanying feature, is the law of compensation. So the law of compensation is that the swing in one direction determines the swing in the opposite direction or to the opposite pole. The one balances or counterbalances the other. This is one of my favorite quotes from the book, and it talks about compensation and how we see it within mankind. The Hermeticists carry it still further. They teach that a man's mental states are subject to the same law. The man who enjoys keenly is subject to keen suffering, while he who feels but little pain is capable of feeling but little joy. The pig suffers but little mentally and enjoys but little. He is compensated. And on the other hand, there are other animals who enjoy keenly, but whose nervous organism and temperament cause them to suffer exquisite degrees of pain. And so it is with man. And the main point of this is the rule is that the capacity for pain and pleasure in each individual are balanced. The law of compensation is in full operation here. So, what does this mean? So, before you've swung up to a certain level of happiness on the happiness sadness scale, you've already experienced that counterpart of sadness. Does this mean that every time you feel good, you are inevitably going to be punished with its counterpart, painful feeling later on? Is there punishment for feeling good? Well, let's see. They hold, however, that the negative is precedent to the positive in this matter. That is to say, that in experiencing a certain degree of pleasure, it does not follow that he will have to pay up for it with a corresponding degree of pain. On the contrary, the pleasure is the rhythmic swing, according to the law of compensation, for a degree of pain previously experienced either in the present life or in a previous incarnation. This throws a new light on the problem of pain. What they're saying, there is no punishment for feeling good. Your feeling good is actually the compensation for a pain that you've already felt, either in the past of this current life or from a previous life. In Hermeticism, they look at the chain of lives or life after life in the cycle of reincarnation as continuous, not separate. The negative is preceding the positive. There is no punishment for you feeling good. There is no, oh, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak. This is also another way to think about the law of compensation, which is the poor have something the rich lack. The millionaire wants to have the drive of the poorer person, while the poorer person wishes he could have the opportunities of the millionaire. So everything in life is going to have a positive and a negative side to it. The law of compensation is ever in operation, striving to balance and counterbalance, and always succeeding in time, even though several lives may be required for the return swing of the pendulum of rhythm. So here are some final thoughts on this topic that I feel like are important takeaways. The first one is to always remember that emotions are transient, right? Emotions are not permanent. Feelings of happiness, sadness, courage, fear, they're ever in fluctuation. So never feel stuck in a certain emotion, or like there will never be a day where your emotions change. The important part here is do not identify with the emotion. Understand it's there, act as an observer to the emotion, but do not identify who you are with that emotion, because the emotion is not who you are. In terms of bringing yourself to the life you desire as well, the law of rhythm really helps you to look at things in a different way, and it helps you to take things off of pedestals, which is something we really want to avoid doing, putting things on pedestals. Sometimes we tend to idealize the things that we want. We look at them like they are free from all flaws. What does this do? This pushes what you want away from you because you're idealizing it and you're putting it above you. Deep down, when you put something above you like that, you feel like you cannot attain it. Understanding that compensation comes into play for anything you want in life, whether it's your dream job, your dream partner, literally anything will stop you from placing that thing above yourself. I also have a little exercise for you to do in terms of noticing the law of rhythm out in nature and within yourself. So what you can do is you can spend some time outdoors observing the different cycles out in nature. So you could do something like watch the sunset or the sunrise, or if you live by a beach, lucky you, I wish. If you live by a beach, You can go ahead and like watch the tides come in and out, ebb and flow. Or if there's rain outside, listening to the rhythm of the rain and really connect with it and understand these laws are happening in our physical world, in our mental planes, and in spiritual planes higher above us. And really start to notice and kind of track, how do nature's rhythms mirror the rhythms within your own life, like in your work or your emotions or in different growth periods of your life? What is a current rhythm in your life that you could relate to a rhythm out in nature that you've observed? And again, I'm trying to get you to connect with the world around you, because everything is experiencing these laws. Everything is interconnected in this way. Um, the laws are in operation on all planes of existence. Anyways, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed this video and this exploration on the law of rhythm, and you found it helpful to further understanding this principle. If you enjoy this type of content, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel to see more content like this. And I tell you in most of my videos, but I always like to leave you with, just try to change one thought. That's it. That's all it takes. Changing one thought, swinging it in your favor one time a day. That's all you've got to do. It will attract more and more of those thoughts. Okay? Have a good one, guys, and thank you for watching.